Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Lewis McGlynn.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Saoirse Healy.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Donald C. Stewart. Broadcasting Scotland is Scotland's independent broadcaster, providing factual news, reporting on the issues important to the people of Scotland.
We are committed to public service broadcasting, and with your support, we will produce even more programmes.
Provide opportunities for young people interested in media production and broadcasting, and challenge preconceptions of what Scottish media looks like, amplifying Scotland's voice and reflecting its communities.
We can already deliver high-quality live news, and we will create the highest quality programmes for you to enjoy. But we can only do that with your support.
So please subscribe to and share our channel or donate to Broadcasting Scotland via the link in the description. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. The first item of business is general questions. The shortest question session we have in the week, and concise questions and responses would be appreciated. And at question number 1, I call Richard Leonard.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I hope you weren't getting at me. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the modernisation of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service.
Minister Siobhan Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Fire Rescue Service has conducted a public consultation on its service delivery review to consider how its services should be best configured to ensure that firefighters are in the right place at the right time. The responses are being independently analysed and will inform final decisions by the Scottish Fire Rescue Board. The SFRS plans to redeploy resources freed up by any changes that they make to provide a greater resource to its prevention and protection function and to boost training provision to ensure firefighters can keep all our communities safe from the challenging risks that they need to respond to, and also to invest in fire station facilities.
Richard Leonard.
Can I thank the Minister for that reply? 2 years ago, the Minister admitted to me that the Scottish Government had handed over £1.7 million of public money to the French company Sistel to set up a single command and control system, but it was botched. And now Motorola, which was given the contract 12 months ago, is already running behind, and within 6 months was already £10 million over budget. When will the Minister get a grip of this latest IT disaster at the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, instead of threatening to cut the number of fire appliances, cut the number of frontline firefighters, and instead of threatening to cut fire and safety emergency cover at fire stations and in communities across Scotland?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Firstly, I have to be clear. The primary driver for the Scottish Fire Rescue Service proposed changes are not financial. The Chief Fire Officer has said this publicly. If he had all the resources that he needed, he would still be considering these changes. I did meet with Mr Leonard back in 2023, and I will ask for an update on the situation, and I'm happy to meet the member about the IT situation.
Brief supplementary, Alistair Allen.
Whilst it's very welcome that house fires have decreased by 20% over the last 10 years, we've witnessed an emergence of new threats, such as the rise in wildfires. So can the Minister say something about the importance of the fire service's ability to adapt to these new risks?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It is welcome that dwelling fires have reduced, as have non-fatal fire casualties, by 33%, and fatal fire casualties by 32% reduction between 2009 and 2010 to 23 and 24. And that shows the value of Scottish Fire Rescue's prevention activity over the years. The rationale behind the Service Delivery Review is so that SFRS can better focus its resources where they are needed most. For example, on training and prevention, so that our firefighters are better located and prepared to deal with current and future risks, such as the record number of wildfire warnings periods that we have seen this year. Now, I appreciate that service changes will always be a matter of concern for people in the immediate vicinity of the impacted fire station, but it is for the SFRS, as the experts in their field, to decide the best changes to be made over time to ensure that firefighters are in the right place at the right time to deal with incidents when they occur.
Thank you. Question number 2, Alexander Burnett.
To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with NHS boards regarding their winter resilience plans.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government continues to engage with NHS boards regarding winter resilience planning. Boards have been asked to provide assurance that robust plans are in place to manage system pressures. These discussions focus on ensuring safe, effective services and maintaining system resilience during periods of pressure. The forthcoming national planning priorities and principles will set out expectations and provide a consistent national approach, and boards are expected to align their local plans accordingly. This process supports coordinated planning across health and social care and ensures readiness to respond to increased demand over the winter period.
Alexander Burnett.
NHS Grampian will be nearly 50 million over budget by the end of the financial year, and the Scottish Government has said it will only be allowed to go 45 million over budget. Now, KPMG has said that increases in staffing levels do not align with the decrease in total beds, and as we head into winter, there will be increased pressures on ARI when services are already stretched. NHS Grampian still has the lowest bed base in Scotland per head of population, and ambulance stacking is a major issue. No beds and no money. Does the Cabinet Secretary have any solution for my constituents and NHS Grampian as we enter into winter?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, President Officer. I had a very productive meeting with the Chair and Chief Executive of NHS Grampian a couple of weeks ago, as well as visiting ARI, the emergency department and other parts of the hospital. I believe that they are bringing forward measures that will help to improve resilience and performance, as well as their financial picture. But I must stress that the work that has been done through the Assurance Board that has been delivered as a result of their escalation is about improving performance first and foremost, and then also about improving the financial picture. We have put more money into NHS Grampian to assist their unscheduled care pathway and their emergency pathways, and I expect that to bear fruit in the coming period.
Brief supplementary, Carol Mockin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government has tightened its NHS criteria for COVID vaccinations, which means boosters will no longer be offered to adults under 75. I understand this decision follows advice from the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation. But as winter approaches, many are concerned. What reassurance can the Scottish Government offer to those no longer eligible for the COVID booster? And is it not concerned that removing the booster for under 75s may lead to an increase in COVID cases, causing pressure on services as we head into winter?
Ms Mockin. Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, President Officer. As Ms Mockin has set out, we are guided in our vaccination programmes by the advice of the independent expert Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation. Their advice, the groups that are eligible for COVID-19 vaccination this winter, not just in Scotland but elsewhere in the UK, as well as residents in care home for older adults, those aged 75 and over, those aged 6 months and over with a weakened immune system. I understand that the groups who are no longer eligible, including the 65 to 74 cohort, and those that are at wider clinical risk and frontline health workers may feel anxious. To them, I would say that the overall threat of COVID has thankfully diminished over time due to high levels of vaccine-based immunity and naturally acquired immunity from infection.
Question number 3, Annabelle Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the status of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service's Service Delivery Review following the public consultation, which closed on 17 September 2025.
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Fire Rescue Service received over 3,500 responses to its review consultation and held over 40 public meetings. The review is in reaction to the changing nature of emergencies that Scottish Fire Rescue Service responds to. For example, dwelling fires, as I've already noted, have been reduced by 20% since 2013, and incidents such as flooding and wildfires have increased significantly. Therefore, it is right for the Scottish Fire Rescue Service to carefully consider how to adapt to the changing risks to remain effective and efficient with firefighters in the right place and at the right time.
Annabelle Ewing.
I thank the Minister for her answer. In fact, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service have refused to confirm that in the event of overwhelming support from local consultation responses for retention of 2 appliances at Lochgelly Fire Station, they will act accordingly and keep both appliances. Can the Minister therefore, for the benefit of my constituents and the Chamber, clarify what the purpose of the consultation is, as surely such equivocation risks the entire process being viewed simply as a sham?
Minister.
Thank you. As I have said before, I believe that it is for the Chief Fire Officer and his commanders across the service to make the decisions that are for the best for the service, protecting communities across the country and respond to the changing natures of risk. This is not a decision for the Scottish Government, and it is appropriate that decisions on the fire appliances are best placed in the matter for them. And as I've outlined, there is an independent analysis going on into the responses to the consultation that will inform the Scottish Fire Rescue Service's final decisions. And any changes that they introduce will be over the next 5 years. I meet frequently with Scottish Fire Rescue Service, and they have confirmed to me that no decisions have been made.
Supplementary, Sharon Dowie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service's own consultation proposes closing 8 fire stations and changing several others from 24-hour whole-time cover to day shift only. The Minister says that will put officers at the right place at the right time. But given that the service's median emergency response time is the slowest in more than a decade, how does the Government expect these changes to improve response times or enhance public safety?
Minister.
Thank you. Just to, firstly, regarding the response time that the member brings up, Scottish Fire Rescue do continue to respond to every emergency incident with the appropriate level of resources. Now, they have a targeted approach to risk and allocation of resources overtook the focus given to response times some years ago, and we have seen an increase in response times across the whole of the UK. Now, the safety of our firefighters is of utmost importance, and Scottish Fire Rescue Service have a strict health and safety policies in place which have evolved over the years. For example, changes to operational procedures to stop firefighters travelling under blue light conditions whilst putting on PPE equipment have added to the response times in recent years, and this is an essential change to protect firefighter safety.
Thank you. Question number 4, Alec Rowley.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to address reported rises in waiting times for social care assessments and packages in Fife.
Minister Tom Arthur.
The Scottish Government acknowledges there is a reported rise in waiting times for social care assessments. The Scottish Government has protected and prioritised additional investment into social care, despite an extremely challenging budget settlement. This includes almost £2.2 billion for social care and integration, exceeding our commitment to increase funding by almost £350 million. Under the Social Work Scotland Act 1968, local authorities and health and social care partnerships have a duty to assess the social care support needs of people, giving due consideration to those assessments to arrange suitable and timely services when required.
Alec Rowley.
Presiding Officer, in Fife there has been a steady increase in terms of assessments over the last year, a 60% increase in the numbers of people waiting. In terms of the number of people who have been assessed and then needing a care package, that has increased over the last year by 127%. Now, we talk about percentages, but these are real people. Does the Minister firstly accept that unless we tackle this, then we're not going to tackle the massive problems within our hospitals and acute care? And secondly, will the Minister agree to have a look specifically at Fife, given that these sustained increases are causing major problems for elderly and vulnerable across Fife?
Minister.
Well, look, can I thank Alex Rowley for the typically constructive spirit in which he raises the issue, and I can actually inform that I met with senior leadership at Fife Health and Social Care Partnership yesterday, and I will be following that up. And I would want to recognise some of the excellent and innovative work that is taking place in Fife, and given me assurance that the Government absolutely recognises the importance of timely assessment and delivery of social care packages, including how that relates to the wider pressures that we face across health and social care. There is a significant amount of work that has been undertaken collaboratively. That is led by the Cabinet Secretary for Health, and we continue to engage closely. I will be following up an engagement with Fife, and I'd be more than happy to keep the member informed of any developments.
Question number 5, Neil Bibby.
To ask the Scottish Government when it last met NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde and what issues were discussed.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Presiding Officer, both Ministers and Scottish Government officials regularly meet with representatives of all NHS boards, including NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, to discuss matters of importance to local people. My most recent engagement with the Chief Executive of NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde was on Tuesday at Bute House, where we discussed, amongst other things, the fact that Scotland has falling waiting times, reduced waiting lists and higher planned care activity.
Neil Bibby.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. The Scottish Government is well aware of the concerns that Unison reps and I have about the impact of the looming closure of Ward 36 at the RH for vulnerable older adults. With winter coming up, now is clearly not the time to be cutting beds. In fact, I am told that Scottish Government money for winter pressures has actually been used to accommodate vulnerable adults in other parts of the hospital where Ward 36 admissions are limited. This is exactly what staff at the RH warned would happen, and it is coming to pass despite a petition with over 7,000 signatures. First, this SNP government came for the children's ward at the RH and closed that. Are they now going to let this ward close for our older folk too and ignore the views of hard-working NHS staff and patients yet again?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I remain of the view that such changes should be carefully considered and decided locally, consistent with national policy, and whilst being meaningfully informed by the views of local stakeholders, including staff and patients. As I said when I previously met and have corresponded with Mr Bibby and Unison on this matter, NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde has been clear that these changes are about providing appropriate, high-quality, safe and sustainable services for older adults in Renfrewshire. Ward 36 has for some time been used for patients awaiting home care or care home placement who are otherwise medically fit for discharge. In line with national policy on shifting the balance of care and minimising delayed discharge, the Health Board has been directing these resources to support local hospital-at-home services.
Question number 6, Michelle Thompson.
To ask the Scottish Government, in light of reported concerns raised by the Scottish Music Industry Association about delays to and sufficiency of funding awards, how it will ensure that the additional £20 million allocated to Creative Scotland for its multi-year funding programme in 25-26 effectively supports a growing number of music-specific organisations.
Cabinet Secretary Angus Robertson.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government has increased Creative Scotland's multi-year funding by £20 million this year, providing a major boost to Scotland's culture sector, and this investment provides stability for organisations to plan and to deliver high-quality programmes in theatre, in visual arts, in literature and music. 46 music organisations now receive multi-year support, which is more than double the previous number, with potentially 3 more in development for 26-27. Many multidisciplinary groups also include music, further strengthening the impact.
Michelle Thompson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response, but I note in the recent independent review of Creative Scotland, UK Music highlighted Scotland's music sector generates over £857 million and sustains over 7,000 jobs. Yet they stress that funding volatility threatens grassroots talent, touring and economic sustainability. Now, I appreciate and understand budgetary pressures, but how will the Cabinet Secretary ensure that Creative Scotland delivers strategic, predictable and resilient investment, particularly for emerging artists, self-releasing labels and rural organisations through 25-26 and beyond?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think the good news for Michelle Thompson and indeed the sector is because of the introduction of multi-annual year funding, that sees an end of the volatility that many organisations previously had to put up with. No other part of the United Kingdom has multi-annual year funding in the way that this government has introduced for the Scottish culture sector, which has such an important impact in the music sector itself. If there are any specific examples that she has of funding volatility at the present time, I'd be grateful if she would let me know. The new system has been introduced, so that is not the case.
Question number 7, George Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it is supporting local cultural activities and festivals to encourage economic development and tourism.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government is investing additional £34 million in Scotland's culture sector this year, moving us closer to the First Minister's pledge to invest at least £100 million more annually by 28-29. The uplift strengthens Creative Scotland's multi-year funding programme, supporting 251 organisations across 27 local authority areas, and expands flagship initiatives such as the Culture Collective and Creative Communities Scotland. These investments boost participation, support jobs and drive cultural and economic growth nationwide. And Visit Scotland's latest survey shows history and culture are one of the biggest attractions for visitors, helping secure Scotland's place as a world-class cultural destination.
George Adam.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. The Cabinet Secretary will be aware that over the past weekend, Paisley had its annual Halloween Festival, which is the largest of its kind in Scotland, ensuring that thousands of buddies were in the Paisley Town Centre on Friday and Saturday night. During the same weekend, Paisley also received the award of Scotland's Town of the Year. Is Paisley leading the way as a perfect example of cultural investment as an important part of town centre regeneration?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I'm very grateful for Mr Adam highlighting the range of interventions and events that are taking place in Paisley. And I think he underlines the fact that this government is committed to supporting cultural and arts events right across Scotland. Paisley is a really important part of Scotland's cultural landscape, and I'm very grateful for him highlighting the many great events that take place there.
Thank you. That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions. And at question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Claire Ingalls was a loving and happy young mum who was tortured and murdered by a man who she had just begun a relationship with. The judge described Claire's murder as, quote, beyond sadistic. The serial criminal who killed her had 40 convictions and was a known danger to women and children. Yet, he was repeatedly bailed to the home that Claire shared with her young son. Claire's parents, Fiona and Ian, have spent 4 years fighting and indeed pleading for information, and they're here today. It's their 3rd time coming to the public gallery during FMQs. Does John Swinney agree that no family should be forced into the media glare and onto the political stage to get answers from Scotland's justice system?
First Minister.
First of all, Presiding Officer, let me say that Mr Finlay has raised the case, the tragic case of Claire Ingalls with me before, and I have had the pleasure, thanks to the assistance of Mr Finlay's staff, of being able to meet with Mr and Mrs Ingalls on their previous visit to Parliament. And I can extend my sympathy to Mr and Mrs Ingalls about the tragedy that they have experienced. I agree with Mr Finlay that no family should have to suffer as Mr and Mrs Ingalls have suffered. The issues in connection with the handling of the case that surrounded the perpetrator of the murder of Claire Ingalls are being explored by the Crown, and the Lord Advocate has taken the independent decisions that she has taken on this matter.
Russell Finlay.
Thank you. Ian and Fiona are here out of devotion to their daughter and a determination to force the full truth from the authorities. And as a result of their pressure, the Crown Office instructed a social work expert to investigate the circumstances of Claire's murder. And the expert's report is truly damning. It says that Claire and her son were, and I quote, invisible in the system. And the repeated granting of bail to Claire's home was, quote, a major safeguarding lapse. Now, the Crown asked the expert to establish if system defects caused or contributed to Claire's murder, but Fiona and Ian have not been told the answer to this critical question, and that's because the Crown only gave them a brief summary of the report. So will John Swinney back the full release of this report?
First Minister.
President Officer, there will be issues that will be applied in relation to the release of the full report, which I am not cited on today. What I will say to Mr Finlay is that the Lord Advocate has brought to Government, in her period of office since 2021, an intense focus on the awful experience of victims in our criminal justice system, and indeed I would pay tribute to the Lord Advocate for the work that she has undertaken to bring the perpetrators of heinous crimes to justice. Therefore, I will ask the Lord Advocate if there can be further dialogue with Mr and Mrs Ingalls on the contents of the report to ensure that the issues about which they remain concerned can be properly and fully aired. There may well be issues about data handling with which Mr Finlay will be familiar that cause constraints on the release of the full report, if the report can be released, I'm very happy for that to be the case, but there may well be reasons why it can't be the case. But what I will do is I will ask the Lord Advocate to engage further with Mr and Mrs Ingalls to ensure that they can have a fuller understanding to try to help them come to terms with the tragic loss that they have suffered.
Russell Finlay.
I agree that the Lord Advocate's focus is sincere and welcome, but the way in which the Ingalls family are being treated is cruel and disrespectful. In 2022, Stirling Council held a serious incident review of Claire's murder, which concluded that a full review wasn't needed. The expert disagrees, saying, quote, "A comprehensive review was absolutely necessary." But to the astonishment of Fiona and Ian, the Crown Office say they've still not decided whether their daughter's murder merits a fatal accident inquiry. Fiona told me, "When we came here last year, we looked John Swinney in the eye and took him at his word that our questions would be answered, but we're still being kept in the dark." So will John Swinney back their calls for a fatal accident inquiry?
First Minister.
I'm trying to be as helpful as I can here. I hope Mr Finlay understands the sincerity of my engagement on this issue, but the calling of a fatal accident inquiry is a matter for the Lord Advocate independently, and I have to, as First Minister, I understand Mr Finlay is able to call for such issues. As First Minister, I have to respect the independence of the Lord Advocate for me to act, otherwise would contravene my oath of office, and I won't do that. What I will say is that I think the process of investigation that was originally conceived of in Stirling Council was not acceptable. It was not good enough, which is why I asked the Crown to look at this again, and why Mr Finlay has in his possession the report that he has, because that was at my instigation that I judged the initial inquiries were totally unsatisfactory. Now, there is a matter of consideration as to whether a fatal accident inquiry would shed any more light on the issue than the exercise that Mr Finlay has. So that's a matter of further consideration. But what I will say is that I will raise these issues directly with the Lord Advocate and ask her for her consideration of these matters to ensure that Mr and Mrs Ingalls can have as much support as possible to come to terms with the loss that they have suffered.
Russell Finlay.
Well, another reason that an FAI is absolutely critical is that the Crown's report reveals a major flaw at the heart of Scotland's bail system. It says, and I quote, that social workers are not obligated to verify bail addresses, which explains why a violent criminal and known danger to women and children was repeatedly bailed to Claire's home address. Now, the report describes this as a systemic flaw. My party has published a paper today setting out changes that are needed to fix Scotland's justice system and to put victims first. Now, Fiona and Ian have urged the Government to back this specific change so that courts must check the veracity of addresses and that they are safe. They say that this could prevent another family from suffering such a tragedy. So will John Swinney commit to urgently ending this bail blind spot that is putting women and children in danger?
First Minister.
President, I'm familiar with the points that Mr Finlay has raised this morning, and as always on these issues in relation to the criminal justice system, we will give them consideration. What I would say, which I hope provides some degree of reassurance, is that in the recent legislation that Parliament has approved, the single bail test makes clear that the court should specifically consider the protection of the victim from a risk of both physical and psychological harm before making the decision on bail. Now, in my view, that would provide the type of protection that Mr Finlay is looking for, and it is already in statute. I appreciate that is of absolutely no comfort to Mr and Mrs Ingalls in the loss that they have suffered, but what I do hope it reassures members of the public about is that the government is taking action to ensure that the type of experience that Mr and Mrs Ingalls have faced we will be mitigating about that in the future because of the steps that we've taken to change the law. But I will, of course, give consideration to the points that Mr Finlay has raised this morning, and, of course, as always, I'll be happy to see Mr and Mrs Ingalls if that would be of any assistance to them.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. John Swinney and the SNP are failing to keep Scots safe. On John Swinney's watch, our justice system is in crisis, and Scots are paying the price of SNP incompetence. This week, Scottish Labour revealed that there are 10,000 outstanding warrants for arrest in Scotland. This includes 7 warrants for murder, 5 for attempted murder, 40 for rape, 1,253 for assault, 72 for domestic violence and 605 for drug charges. Potential murderers, rapists and drug dealers on our streets. With 10,000 outstanding warrants in Scotland and prison numbers outstripping capacity by several hundreds, can I ask John Swinney, apart from letting criminals out early or not arresting them at all, what will he do to tackle this crisis?
First Minister.
The first thing I'd say to put some context around about what Mr Sarwar is raising is that Scotland is a safer place since this government took office. Recorded crime remains below the position immediately prior to the pandemic in 2019-2020 and is down 39% since 2006-07 when this government came to office. Now, I acknowledge that at any moment in time there will be outstanding arrest warrants, and that is the execution of warrants is an operational matter for Police Scotland, and they remain focused on the investigation of crime and of keeping communities safe. Police numbers are well supported in the country. The latest official statistics show there were 16,427 police officers as at the 30th of June 2025, and there remains a healthy recruitment pipeline for police officers in Scotland today. The Government is, of course, taking action to address the size of the prison population, but there are significant constraints in relation to the proposals the Government puts forward as to which prisoners can be considered eligible for early release, and those standards will be rigorously applied in all that the Government takes forward.
Anna Sarwar.
That is a woeful answer to the fact that there are 10,000 outstanding arrest warrants in Scotland. John Swinney is unable to admit his government's failure, but if he won't listen to me, maybe he will listen to people working on the front line. Just yesterday, the Prison Officers Association published a report saying that our prisons are at crisis point, with serious overcrowding and understaffing, increased levels of violence, widespread drug misuse and self-harm, and plummeting staff morale. But, Presiding Officer, unbelievably, his Justice Secretary yesterday said that the SNP will not build any more prisons, as in her words, if we build them, they will come. If we build them, they will come. So Angela Constance thinks having more prison places encourages crime, but letting criminals out early discourages crime. That might be one of the most incoherent and stupidest things I've ever heard in my life. What are they going to claim next? What are they going to claim next? That building more hospitals will somehow make people more ill in Scotland? So who does John Swinney agree with? Angela Constance or prison officers?
First Minister.
One of the many flaws in Mr Sarwar's argument that he's just put to me is that in relation to the proposals that the Government is currently implementing to build His Majesty's Prison Glasgow will be to a design capacity of 1,344 prisoners, which will add 357 places to the overall prison estate. So that just debunks the nonsense that Mr Sarwar has just put to me in his diatribe. There is a serious issue here that Parliament has to address, and the serious issue is this. Because of the successful prosecution of people who have committed serious crimes, many of them historic in our society, is that people are serving longer sentences. So therefore, there are more long-term prisoners in our prison estate. Of the 8,000 or so prisoners who are currently in our prison estate, 2,000 of them are there on remand. So a proportion of those prisoners will not end up in the system on a long-term basis. And therefore, there are judgments to be made by the criminal justice system independently about the issues in relation to whether individuals should be on remand. And the other issue is about short-term sentences. Now, there have been umpteen reports. Indeed, there was a report which I think has been welcomed warmly by the United Kingdom Government, Mr Sarwar's colleagues, produced by David Gauck, who was a very imaginative Justice Secretary in the Conservative Government. But Mr Gauck's report indicates the very real issues that have got to be considered about short-term prison sentences. So there is a real debate that's got to be had here in Parliament, which my Justice Secretary is openly undertaking with Parliament, with numerous statements to Parliament and a comprehensive committee appearance yesterday, about the appropriateness of prison in all circumstances for all prisoners. Now, I don't want my comments to be misunderstood. When it comes to people who have committed heinous crimes and they are sentenced to long-term imprisonment, they should serve that. But there are debates that have to be had about the appropriateness of prison in all circumstances because of the pressures on the prison estate. There have to be appropriate disposals for individuals. Community justice authorities, which the Government has substantially increased funding for, have a role to play. And all of those factors are relevant in having a rational debate about the prison population. And I hope Mr Sarwar is able to contribute to that.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, John Swinney and the SNP have been in charge of the justice system for 18 years. Nobody else. And the entire justice system on their watch is in chaos. And all the SNP has to offer is bizarre comments and rank incompetence. And it proves that we can't risk a third decade of this incompetent SNP government. We face rising levels of violent crime, effective legalisation.
Let's hear Mr Sarwar. Thank you. Let's hear Mr Sarwar.
They don't want to hear it, Presiding Officer, because it's their record. We face rising levels of violent crime, effective legalisation of shoplifting and 10,000 outstanding arrest warrants. But what does the SNP do in response? It bills the taxpayer £1 billion for a prison that was supposed to cost £100 million. It allows hundreds of drug dealers to walk free. It cuts police numbers. It closes police stations across Scotland. It lets criminals out early, and it pushes our prisons to breaking point. So when will John Swinney finally admit that his record and the SNP record on justice is nothing short of criminal?
First Minister.
My government, so Mr Sarwar said that everything to date is the responsibility of my government, so I accept that responsibility. I'm a First Minister that stands here every week and takes responsibility. I don't dodge it for a moment. Well, let's hear. We've listened to Mr Sarwar's explanation. On this government's watch, the latest figures for 23-24 show recorded crime is at one of the lowest levels seen since 1974 and down 39% since 2006-07. Police numbers higher than when this government came to office. Recorded crime at the lowest levels.
First Minister, sorry, just a moment. I'd just like to point out that those who are attending in the gallery today do wish to hear all questions and contributions. First Minister.
And I would just point out to members of the public in the gallery and members of the public watching at home that in all that diatribe, 6 months before an election, there wasn't a single solution from Mr Sarwar to the issues that we face. And also, when it comes to putting his finger on the button to vote for a budget that would provide for police numbers, or provide for prison officers, or provide for prisons, Mr Sarwar doesn't vote for the government's provisions. This is just rhetoric and hypocrisy, and I'm proud to defend a record that's one of the lowest levels of crime since 1974, and I'll set that out to the people of Scotland.
Thank you. Question number 3, Ross Greer.
Thank you. Scotland is a monumentally unequal country. There are a small number of people sitting on more wealth than they could spend in 1,000 lifetimes. There are about 420 people who own almost half of our private land. But this morning, thousands of children will have gone to school hungry because of poverty. The Scottish Government's own recent report showed that the top 2% have more than half, the same amount of wealth as more than half the population combined. This month, SNP members instructed their leadership to begin discussions with the UK Government about wealth taxes. But Scottish Government ministers have repeatedly rejected opportunities to tax wealth with the powers that they already have. They've rejected proposals to end tax breaks for big landowners. They rejected proposals to end the King's personal tax exemptions. They rejected proposals to introduce a mansion tax. It's like they're just hoping that the public won't notice that when push comes to shove, this is a government that does not want to risk upsetting the rich and powerful. So can the First Minister name one proposal that he will bring forward before the election to tax wealth in Scotland?
First Minister.
Mr Greer will know from his detailed experience of engaging with the Government that we set out our tax proposals in relation to the budget, and that's exactly what the Government will do, and will give every consideration to these questions. I am absolutely one with Mr Greer about his concern about inequality in this country. That's why my government is driven by the determination to eradicate child poverty, in which, as a consequence of the tax decisions that we have made, we are making progress in being the only part of the United Kingdom to have a falling level of child poverty when it is projected to rise in every other part of the United Kingdom. And then, in relation to some of the suggestions that Mr Greer has made, as he knows from his previous engagement, indeed I have personally been engaged in some of these questions, we have explored some of the practical aspects of the proposals that he has put to us, and we haven't been able to find a pathway through that would work effectively without consequences that would be damaging to the policy intention. We have, of course, used land and building transaction tax, for example, to weight tax charges to the higher end of the income spectrum, and of course, as I say, we'll consider these issues in relation to the formulation of the Government's budget.
Ross Greer.
Thank you. I look forward to discussions with the First Minister about the budget because, as he mentioned, we do have options here. I would say to him that the reason the Government couldn't agree to remove the King's personal tax exemption had nothing to do with practical difficulties, and I think we can all understand why the Government didn't support that. But there are options here. Land and Buildings Transaction Tax that he mentioned, non-domestic rates, council tax, these are all wealth taxes and they're all entirely within the Scottish Government's control. The largest single form of wealth in Scotland is property, and property wealth has surged by almost £100 billion in the last decade. But council tax is still stuck in 1990, where the poorest pay more than they should and the wealthiest get off with an absolute steal. And in turn, our local services are at breaking point. Families can't get social care packages for elderly relatives. Children with additional needs go without the support they need at school because the staff just aren't there. Community centres and libraries have closed. This government is promised to scrap the council tax 18 years ago, and this week they launched another consultation. The First Minister knows this farce can't continue, so will he commit today that whichever options find the most support through this consultation, the Scottish Government will bring forward a bill to reform or replace the council tax after the election?
First Minister.
President Officer, what I'd say to Mr Greer, is that obviously in relation to the council tax, the government has brought forward and consulted on proposals about replacing the council tax when we put that to the public as a prospect in 2007, and we were unable to command a parliamentary majority on these questions. So that's why we've taken the steps which we are trying to take with other parties to create a broader political consensus in favour of council tax reform, and we will endeavour to do that. What I would say also to Mr Greer is that in relation to the last budget, for which we were appreciative of the support of the Green Party, we were able to deliver a much better settlement to local government, which improved on the financing of local government. So I pay tribute to Green colleagues and Liberal Democrat colleagues for voting for the budget, unlike everybody else in here, who were not interested in giving a better settlement to local government, but at least the Greens and the Liberal Democrats and the SNP were. So we will continue to engage constructively to support local services, because I share Mr Greer's view that we rely upon local services to support the population in Scotland.
Question number 4, Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister whether the Scottish Government has had any initial response from the UK Government in relation to the letter sent to the Minister of State for Food Security and Rural Affairs on the 22nd of October regarding the Fishing and Coastal Growth Fund.
First Minister.
President Officer, we have had no reply to that letter. Scotland previously received 46% of the UK's EU fisheries funding allocation, compared to just 7.78% from the new UK fund, which spreads over 12 years with no guarantees beyond the current UK Parliament. We are told that the UK fund is specifically aimed at revitalising the fishing sector, so allocations should reflect the relative size and importance of Scotland's fishing sector. Scottish industry leaders have urged UK ministers to reconvene a meeting of the Scottish Seafood Industry Action Group to discuss this issue, and we plan to support that call in writing.
Harper.
Thank the First Minister for that response. The recent funding announcement is yet another example of UK Government that does not understand or indeed care about our fishing and coastal communities. Fishing is a hugely important contributor to the local economy in the south-west of Scotland, including in Kirkcudbright for landing and processing. And given this and the range of pressures facing the sector, from proposed cuts to quotas to dealing with the ongoing impacts of Brexit, does the First Minister agree with me that this deal, which is an insult and betrayal to Scotland and our fishing sector, cannot stand and must be reconsidered? What further steps will the Scottish Government take to protect and support the Scottish fishing sector?
First Minister.
I think I agree very much with Emma Harper's point, and I think I should reiterate to Parliament that previously Scotland received 46% of the UK's EU fisheries funding allocation, and that's now gone down to 7.78%, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of fish in the United Kingdom are landed here in Scotland. So this is just completely and utterly inequitable. I saw one of my parliamentary colleagues in the House of Commons asking if the Secretary of State for Scotland had made any representations to ministers about this point, and no answer was forthcoming. So it would be interesting to know if the Secretary of State for Scotland actually bothered to stand up for Scotland, or whether it's just another example of the UK Government taking a decision which is prejudicial to Scotland. And I assure Emma Harper and colleagues representing constituencies with a fishing interest that we will do everything we can to get a different outcome for Scotland.
Beatrice Wishart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. 9% of the value of fish landed in the UK comes through Shetland ports. What percentage of the Fishing and Coastal Growth Fund can Shetland expect to receive via the Scottish Government?
First Minister.
Well, actually, the point Beatrice Wishart makes, if I've got my numbers correct in what she said, 9% of the UK's allocation comes into Shetland, and Scotland is getting 7.78% of the fund. So Shetland's contribution to fish landings exceeds the allocation to the whole of Scotland. So that beautifully makes my point about the inequity of this situation. So obviously we'll engage constructively with Shetland Islands Council. I'm seeing the leader of Shetland Islands Council later on this afternoon, so I'm sure we might discuss this issue. But I can assure her that we will work collaboratively with the industry in Shetland. But the fundamental inequity is the UK Government's allocation, and that's the issue that has to be remedied.
Question number 5, Ross McCall.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's response is to reports that Babcock in Fife have had to hire workers from overseas as a result of reduction in some college courses.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the latest data shows that there are already over 14,000 full-time equivalent college students on engineering courses in Scotland. We are working to support colleges to meet Scotland's future skill requirements and are investing £750 million in colleges in the current year.
Ross McCall.
First Minister, employers in Fife, such as Babcock, are crying out for investment in local skills to drive local growth and opportunity, but have seen college budgets cut by a staggering 20% over the past 5 years and apprenticeships sharply declining by as much as a third in the last decade. The truth is, this SNP government has categorically failed to maintain investment in the skills local employers need to fuel economic growth. A local college source all but confirmed that the capacity to provide many more courses exists, but simply cannot afford to offer them to students given the financial situation placed upon them by this government. And this year's funding allocation included a £1.3 million cut on top of 19.4% reduction over the last 3 years, with the principal of the college stating that the scale of the challenge is now precipitous. Does the First Minister accept that these reductions in skills investment are making it harder for young people in Scotland to access training and employment, and for our businesses to recruit the local workers that they need?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, there's a number of issues in that question. Let me confirm to Parliament that in 2024-25, over 25,000 people started a modern apprenticeship in Scotland, with 39,000 individuals in training at the end of Q4 24-25. In relation to college funding, the Scottish Funding Council allocations provide a 2.6% sector increase in teaching funding for 2025-26 compared to last year, and no college saw a reduction in teaching funding in 2025-26 compared to the previous year. In addition to that, the government is of course supporting in the funding of the new Fife College in Dunfermline, which will be available to local people. And lastly, let me just make this point to Ros McCall, because I can hear I'm being heckled by Ros McCall and others. It is laughable for the Conservatives to come here and ask for more money for something if they won't vote for the government's budget. It's hypocrisy in action. We get it every year from the Conservatives, and I'm going to call it out every time the Conservatives ask for more money in this Parliament.
Thank you. I would remind members that it would be helpful if we could hear one another. I call Pam Duncan-Glancy as a supplementary question.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And the First Minister says there's been a 2.6% increase, but a 2.6% increase in 1 year does not undo a decade of underfunding to colleges in Scotland to the tune of 20%. And that means, as Colleges Scotland has said, fewer students able to access a world-class college education. So it's hardly a surprise then that we have a growing skills shortage, and firms like Babcock are recruiting hundreds of welders from overseas just to keep work on track. All the while, Presiding Officer, nearly 250,000 young people in Scotland don't have jobs. This government's choices are denying young people chances. So can I ask the First Minister, can't he see this? And why is he content to manage the decline of Scotland's colleges and deny Scotland's young people the opportunities they deserve in the process?
First Minister.
Well, we're quite simply not doing that, because the government is allocating more funding to the college sector. We're investing in college infrastructure, and as I've just said to Ros McCall, we are just completing the investment in the new Dunfermline Learning Campus with premises for Fife College. So the government will sustain our investment in the college sector. We understand its importance. We see the significance of college funding to support the delivery of skills within Scotland, and that's at the heart of the government's budget, which again I would point out Pam Duncan-Glancy never voted for either.
Question number 6, Pauline McNeill.
To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's position is regarding the reported 200,000 public sector workers who are still waiting on their pension entitlement following the 2018 MacLeod judgment on pension discrimination.
First Minister.
So we recognise the MacLeod judgment affects the administration of pensions across the United Kingdom, who have extended their timelines to reflect the challenges of delivery. In Scotland, there are approximately 215,000 members of affected schemes administered by the Scottish Public Pensions Agency. We should note that the vast majority of these scheme members have not yet retired and will make their remedy choice on retirement. Of the 65,000 retired members affected, there are many who will already be getting the best value pension. For those who have a choice that enables a higher pension, they will receive any arrears, including interest, to be paid for by the United Kingdom Government. The Scottish Public Pensions Agency is working to ensure that all those who are awaiting the remedy receive it, with the bulk of statements delivered by the end of 2026.
Pauline McNeill.
This has been described by those affected as a national scandal, and it is. Public sector workers, including nurses, police officers, firefighters and local government workers, are still to receive pension funds amounting to tens of thousands. So 7 years on from the MacLeod judgment on pension discrimination, there are in fact 55,000 still waiting on pension remedy statements, and they must be received before any compensation is paid. In fact, some have died waiting for their pension remedy statements from the Scottish Public Pensions Agency, and it has broken at least 2 statutory deadlines, but tomorrow it will miss a 3rd deadline, and delays are now expected to run until 2027. But every year a deadline is missed is a cost to the taxpayer in interest payments of 8%. So does the First Minister agree with me that after 7 years it is unacceptable that the SPPA have not put this right? And given it is a government agency, I ask the First Minister, what action is he prepared to take to bring forward the work required to issue remedy statements to pay public sector pensioners on time, and what further redress is he going to provide for those impacted by this debacle? And here I am talking about those who have already retired on reduced pensions. At least you could agree there is an urgency here now.
First Minister.
I do agree with that point, and what I would provide as reassurance is that when the remedy letters are issued, they will give a choice that enables a higher pension, if a higher pension applies, that the individuals will receive any arrears, including interest, and that will be paid for by the United Kingdom Government. Now, and this is an issue that has implications for the UK Government. Now, this issue has been taken forward by the relevant Minister, Ivan McKee. I think colleagues know the assiduous way in which Mr McKee takes forward his responsibilities. That has involved increasing the workforce at the SPPA by more than 30% to help to ensure that the experienced staff that are necessary to calculate often complex recalculations of pension entitlement are able to do that. So I hope that gives Pauline McNeill some reassurance that the Government has actually increased the resources quite significantly of the SPPA to ensure that we can make timely progress on this issue.
Question number 7, Ash Regan.
To ask the First Minister for what reason the Scottish Government has reportedly abandoned key provisions of the Fireworks Act of 2022, including the proposed licensing system, as communities prepare for potential disorder during bonfire night.
First Minister.
So the majority of the Act has been implemented, including support for local authorities to implement fireworks control zones to tackle hotspots where disorder has been experienced. We've also introduced new offences for providing fireworks or pyrotechnics to children and using fireworks to attack emergency workers. The licensing system has been paused due to the cost of introducing it at present, but that will be kept under review. Anyone taking part in illegal activity or disorder can expect a robust response from Police Scotland, as demonstrated by the recent major seizures of fireworks.
Ash Regan.
Presiding Officer, this Parliament passed that law to protect both the public and our emergency services over 3 years ago, and 4 bonfire nights since this law was enacted. Constituents and emergency services that I worked with to bring this law remain at their wits' end. And with respect to the First Minister, I would say that firework control zones don't work without control on purchasing as well. Now, only the UK Government, of course, can ban fireworks. But this was one of the highest public responded consultations that this Parliament ever ran. And those communities on the front line, mine is one of them, This has become an annual bonfire night war zone in constituencies across Scotland, and I think that they deserve for Scotland to use all the powers that we have available to us to help them. These communities are now bracing for impact. Firefighters, police and paramedics are continuously putting themselves in harm's way to protect the public, and they deserve more than warm words. They deserve the delivery of the law. The licensing system is still undelivered, and vital fire stations like Marionville in my constituency are facing closure. Public trust, I believe, is on the line. So will the First Minister commit to looking again at implementing this law in full?
First Minister.
President, I want to reassure Ash Regan that a number of the central provisions of the law have been implemented already. A prohibition on providing or making available fireworks or pyrotechnic articles to children, a new statutory aggravation for court sentencing offenders where fireworks were used to attack emergency workers, the powers in relation to firework control zones, and new offences on possession of pyrotechnics in public places and at designated venues and events. So very strong action has been taken place, but I come back to the point I made in my answer originally, that anyone taking part in illegal activity or disorder can expect a robust response from Police Scotland. That is what has taken place in the past, and I would expect that to be the case in the future.
Brief supplementary, Emma Roddick.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Animal welfare charities are raising concerns about the severe distress that fireworks cause to many animals. The Scottish Animal Welfare Commission has said the effect of the delay in implementing the licensing scheme will prolong the period of unacceptable risk to animal welfare. So will the Scottish Government consider any early implementation of licensing and restrictions on the days that fireworks can be used and sold to protect animals?
First Minister.
Well, these issues will be kept under review, as I said to Ash Regan, and the Minister for Victims and Community Safety has liaised with the Scottish Animal Welfare Commission on our work to mitigate against the impact of fireworks, including how noise affects animals.
Brief supplementary, Sharon Dowie.
Okay. The Bail and Release from Custody Act 2023 remains only partially implemented. The Female Genital Mutilation Act 2020 is not implemented, and now the Fireworks and Pyrotechnics Act 2022 has been quietly paused. This is just the latest example of this government talking tough, passing legislation, then sneakily dropping it when it becomes inconvenient. So can I ask the First Minister, how can the public have confidence that the Victims Bill will be fully implemented? And can the First Minister explain why the public, indeed why this Parliament, had to find out about this U-turn through the press instead of the Minister herself?
First Minister.
Well, I can assure Sharon Dowie that the Government will focus intently on implementing the Victims and Witnesses Bill. It's been legislated for in Parliament, and we're taking that forward as we take forward other pieces of legislation that are approved by Parliament.
We move to constituency and general supplementaries. Can I suggest that we are concise? I call Bill Kidd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, last week it was revealed that a fragment of waste found near the decommissioned experimental nuclear power facility in Dunray in April was the most radioactive detected in the past 3 years. Despite these clear environmental warnings, UK Labour ministers are threatening to impose expensive, unsafe and unnecessary new nuclear sites in Scotland. Does the First Minister agree with me that Labour should see sense and abandon their nuclear obsession?
First Minister.
President, the Scottish Government has been consistent in its opposition to the development of nuclear energy within Scotland. We think Scotland has a golden opportunity to develop renewables, and we should concentrate on doing so.
Absolutely. Tess White.
Officer, Police Scotland have ordered a director of 4 Women Scotland to attend a police station to face vandalism charges over a complaint about a broken umbrella. If she doesn't attend, she could be banned from Holyrood, a parliament that's supposed to represent her too. And the optics, First Minister, of this for the Scottish Government are terrible. To many people, this looks like a threat to free speech and an attempt to silence criticism, silence women and intimidate this particular organisation. Who is protecting who here, First Minister? Does the First Minister agree the police should be focused on much more serious incidents than a broken umbrella? And does he think Susan Smith should receive an immediate apology?
First Minister.
President, so let me reassure Tess White that I believe in free speech and I think it should be protected at all times in our society. And secondly, I understand from media reports that, and also from the contents of Tess White's question, that this is an issue which actively involves Police Scotland, and it would be inappropriate of me to comment on a case that is under active engagement with Police Scotland. If I was to do that
Hear the First Minister.
If I was to do that on a habitual basis, I think there'd be lots of members of Parliament complaining about me doing so.
Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Insurance giant Maiden Life has suddenly announced that it is withdrawing the family protection plan that thousands of Glaswegian credit union members have been paying since it started in 1999. This immoral and callous withdrawal of the plan is causing widespread distress to my constituents in Glasgow and across the country. So will the First Minister share my condemnation of Maiden Life's decision and make a direct representation to the Financial Conduct Authority, along with the Credit Union Working Group, to demand immediate redress for the thousands of elderly Scots who will now be left unable to cover the cost of their funeral plans?
First Minister.
I'm very sympathetic to the point that Mr Sweeney puts to me, and I will ask the Finance Secretary to engage directly with him. Credit unions provide an essential foundation in our society for people, particularly for people who are on low incomes and with and low savings levels. So it's important that financial security is available to them. But I'll ask the Finance Secretary to engage with Mr Sweeney and make the representations that he asked for.
Claire Haughey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I remind Chamber that I am employed as a bank nurse by NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. This week, this SNP government announced the largest investment in GP services in Scotland ever, with more than £500 million over the next 3 years to support recruitment. And latest NHS waiting list figures are showing long waits down for the 4th month in a row, whilst NHS activity is rising. These tangible results show what happens when you have an SNP Scottish Government delivering for Scotland's NHS. What steps is the SNP government...
Let's hear one another.
What steps is this SNP government taking to build on this programme?
Ms Haughey, sorry. It's just a matter of basic courtesy. Surely we can afford one another that most basic courtesy. Ms Haughey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What steps is this SNP government taking to build on this progress, to boost capacity in our NHS and ensure that Scots continue to have access to the highest quality NHS services?
First Minister.
President, I'm very pleased that we are seeing a decrease in new outpatient waits longer than a year. I'm delighted that we are seeing the total waiting list for outpatients and inpatients and day case lists decreasing compared to the same month last year. I'm delighted that treatment time guarantee waits of over a year have decreased by 6% when compared to last month. And I'm also delighted that the Health Secretary has managed to reach agreement with the Scottish GP Committee, which will see general practice receive additional funding of more than £500 million over the next 3 years. And along with my commitment to deliver 15 walk-in GP clinics across Scotland, added to NHS lists that are falling, the Scottish people can look forward to a strong National Health Service under SNP leadership.
Thank you. Tim Eagle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister may or may not be aware of the Murray Firth Flow Park project being proposed off Finhorn and Nairn, which will be wet storage for offshore wind platforms. I've already met with fishermen who are deeply concerned, and I've got a public meeting on the 11th of November where hundreds of people are interested. I don't want the First Minister to tell me that he can't comment due to planning or licensing applications, but perhaps he can help me answer the age-old question in Scotland that his government are failing on. That is, how can I ensure that my communities that I represent are better heard and represented in the decision-making process?
First Minister.
Well, there's a full range of different opportunities for these issues to be properly and fully considered. Yeah. There's a huge amount of scrutiny is applied to applications of this type, with significant assessments that are required, particularly for environmental reasons. And obviously, Mr Eagle will be familiar with all of these contents because they are part and parcel of statute, and there is opportunities for engagement on all of these questions.
And John Mason.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Can the First Minister give us an update on the Sheku Bio inquiry, and can he assure us that we will not be spending another £50 million on it and it will be concluded timorously?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I very much regret the fact that Lord Bracadale felt it necessary to resign from chairing the Sheku Bio inquiry. I want to place on record my admiration and appreciation, and that of the Government, for the service that Lord Bracadale has given to this inquiry, which I think has been exemplary. But I respect and understand his decision to step down. The Deputy First Minister has thanked Lord Bracadale for his work and is now engaging about how to take forward the inquiry. We will keep Parliament updated on the steps that are necessary to do so. There is, as Mr Mason will know, we have statutory consultation that we have to undertake about the chairing of the inquiry, and that will be undertaken timorously, and we will keep Parliament advised of the steps that we take.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. Point of order, Rachel Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Within the past 12 hours, Police Scotland say they are reviewing a decision to issue Susan Smith of 4 Women Scotland with a police recorded warning, a warning that, if it's not accepted, would have led to a charge of criminality. Video evidence from a peaceful protest held outside this Parliament on the 4th of September, at which I spoke and my colleagues spoke, shows clearly that there is no evidence of criminality, i.e. vandalism, towards an individual who played loud music to drown out the voices of women peacefully protesting and calling for the Scottish Government to adhere to the Supreme Court judgment on the biological sex. Presiding Officer, the public must be reassured of their democratic rights, and the freedom of speech is valued by this Parliament, the Scottish Government and Police Scotland. I ask what mechanisms there are to understand if Police Scotland have had conversations with ministers regarding this incident on the parliamentary estate, and also which led to it being reviewed. Finally, does the presiding officer believe that all protests are equal and deserve to be safely facilitated, or is it just ones that suit SNP ideology?
Thank you, Ms Hamilton. Ms Hamilton will be aware that the comments that the member has just put on the record are not, in fact, a point of order. The next item of business is a member's business debate in the name of Craig Hoy, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the chamber and the public gallery to do so.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Lewis McGlynn.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Saoirse Healy.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Donald C. Stewart. Broadcasting Scotland is Scotland's independent broadcaster, providing factual news, reporting on the issues important to the people of Scotland.
We are committed to public service broadcasting, and with your support, we will produce even more programmes.
Provide opportunities for young people interested in media production and broadcasting, and challenge preconceptions of what Scottish media looks like, amplifying Scotland's voice and reflecting its communities.
We can already deliver high-quality live news, and we will create the highest quality programmes for you to enjoy, but we can only do that with your support.
So please subscribe to and share our channel, or donate to Broadcasting Scotland via the link in the description. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.